evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Exceptional Conservative Show live from the nation's capital, where we are not ashamed of the good news of conservatism, for it is the power of liberation. Verse 2. The Republican and then the Socialist. I know many people around the country are tuning in and listening to the debate tonight for the Republicans. Being the king of 9 p.m., sure, I would have enjoyed doing that, but I enjoy this a whole lot more. Mary Brockman, my bouncers in the chat roll at theexceptionalconservativeshow.com. Love you, Mary. Glad to have you here tonight. Mrs. Biggs is watching via Ustream or live stream. So glad to be able to present to her and others tonight the best, most influential urban conservative talk show in the world. Forgive my delay coming to you tonight. I got some good news for you. Some very good news for you. And I'll be sharing that after the Pledge of Allegiance. You know what we do when we start this particular program. But I also want to talk with you just briefly before we get the underground professor on with us. By golly. D.C. is trying to do a crime bill in which they're going to pay murderers not to murder. Just saying. Just saying. So we'll probably talk about that in the latter half of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what to do. When we get together on nights like this, we turn everything off. We find our right hand and we put it over our heart. And we say Pledge of Allegiance. Spanish and English. Señor Cabrera, lead us.
Buenas tardes, niños. This is Spanish with Señora Cabrera. Today we will learn how to say the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish. In English, we say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, in Spanish, we say, juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que...
Okay, well, we say, thank you, Señor Cabrera. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Dave Milner's joined us in the chat room. Thank you so much. Glad to have you here, my good friend. You know him better as the Unpleasant Blind Guy. We're getting ready to call as we're shifting into our Saturday afternoon Superstar Classic program, New Day Black and Red on WNJC 1360 AM out of the city of brotherly love. That's Philadelphia, PA. On this particular night, we bring in none other than the guru, the superstar, and I'm just the humble sidekick on New Day Black and Red. Just want to let you know. I get his water for him, and then he lets me comment a couple of times or two, and I really appreciate Dr. Michael Jones for allowing me to do that. I want to present to some and introduce to others Dr. Michael Jones. We're getting ready to call him up on this great production work. There we go. One ringy dingy. There we go. There we go. We got a bait. We got bait. Let's see.
I'm in the middle of a crisis.
We're listening to.
My network went down. Maybe you should unplug my network.
Ah!
All crashed.
Well, Donald Trump paid her to do it. I just want.
Yeah, probably.
Ladies and gentlemen, doing well. We have on the air with us tonight the superstar of New Day Black and Red, of course, Dr. Michael Jones. I'm his sidekick, Tonto. No,
Tito.
Tito. I'm sorry. I'm his sidekick, the exceptional one, Kim McClinton, and we're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network in Philadelphia, PA, home of the benevolent dictator Rick Trader. As we broadcast live to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to New Jersey and Delaware, and also around the world on the network. Also, we broadcast on SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, and Rebooting Liberty, amongst a number of other places. So we thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. Professor, you got your network back? Just
I
checking.
don't know. It's saying that I don't.
Wow.
It's saying that I've got problems here. I'm not sure what's going on. It says I have an unknown Apple password here. I'm typing them in.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I don't know if that just worked. You talk while I type because I can't think right now.
Thank you. Like I said before, I like it when the underground professor gives me permission to give a few comments on New Day Black and Red, a program that we've engineered together that we might be able to give you a constitutional as well as a biblical worldview, and to allow you to get some perspectives on the issues of the day that we normally would not hear on the mainstream media, even the conservative media. So we're very glad to have you here. I also want to say this in passing, because today's subject matter, well, it kind of, I guess it portends towards a story that I'm going to already talk about. But Karl Marx, Weapons of Political Warfare, is what we're going to talk about in this particular segment. And many people would think that the weapons of warfare that Marx chose might have been slightly different. I mean, he was an economics guy. He talked about labor and political intrigue and things of that particular nature, dealing with the social connectivity of the proletariat versus the oppression of the bourgeoisie. So there was a ideal that maybe he wasn't going to use such simple tools as the one that we're going to talk about. In fact, he had 3 suggestions, and I want to read that for you as the professor is preparing to come back to us. In fact, earlier this week, I did a segment regarding Karl Marx on racism. And I want you to understand that Karl Marx cared very little for black people, despite the fact that individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois, even the great Dr. King, so many looked upon him for his excellence in understanding the need for redistribution of wealth. Well, he writes in a letter to Vogt in New York to New York. He was in London at the time, April 9th, 1870, and he's writing about the oppressive state of the Irish in England. And he goes on to say he cherishes religion, religious, social, and national prejudice against the Irish worker. Talking about the Englishman, of course. His attitude towards him is much the same as that of the poor whites to the niggers in the former slave states of the USA. The Irishman pays him back with interest and his own money. Literally, Karl Marx understood that race was built on emotional issues. There's no way you could ever change the color of your, well, unless you do a movie called Watermelon Man. But beyond that, and sitting in a bathtub of milk, there's no way you're going to change the color of your skin. Karl Marx understood that, and Karl Marx purposed himself to use that which was inexplicable for most people to conceive as a simple way of drawing distinction and as well individuals into bellicose argument. simply put, he knew how to rile people up. And riling people up is built on the fabric of the most simple things. He writes in this letter, this antagonism is artificially kept alive. Okay, he's talking about the difference in races and how people are angst against it or whatever. He recognized that. He says the antagonism, is artificially kept alive and intensified by the press, the pulpit, and the comic papers. In short, by all the means at the disposal of the ruling classes. Now, there's a message in that to those he was messaging. And many people would decipher that to say that he was being succinctly adamant in his opposition to the bourgeoisie. But really, he was sending a sub-message to individuals who were reading his letter on racism. He understood that if you were to take advantage of the press, take advantage of the pulpit, and then take advantage of the satire that was done in a country, specifically the U.S., with the morning newspapers and so on, you could literally do what people who have oration on the House floor or the Senate floor took years to do in terms of causing the polls to move. He understood that people are emotional. And when they are emotional, they make decisions. And sometimes they are not the best decisions, but they are the decisions nonetheless. And so tonight we're going to be taking. What? 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 Did you strike oil, sir?
Yeah, I laugh. You know, a lot of people, they love quoting Karl Marx in college, right?
Yeah.
Although college has gotten rid of all the dead white males out of college because, you know, they're only the Brits will study Shakespeare, you know, only the Greeks will study Plato and Socrates and whatnot. So the rest of the world doesn't need to know any of that stuff. Dante is reserved to the Italians. But Karl Marx wrote a book called World Without Jews. And the interesting thing about that is that on both sides of his family, they're rabbinic. They have, you know, rabbis and Jews all through his family. And so it is thought that by many historians, in fact, the Karl Marx book, World Without Jews, his anti-Semite masterpiece, was the forerunner to Hitler's Mein Kampf. Yeah. And so, anyway, I think it's funny, you know, you talk about Web Du Bois.
Dubois.
W-E-B Du Bois.
You got to say bois.
Web Du Bois.
Ah.
And Mary got on me because she didn't like the way I spelled it, but I was trying to spell it that way that I'm saying it, you know, so I could be funny. But she didn't like me being funny. So she says if I'm going to be funny, I should stick to my books. So Web Du Bois says this: I sit with Shakespeare and he winces not. Across the color line, I walk arm in arm with Balzac, not Balzac, Balzac, B-A-L-Z-A-C, and Dumas, you know, the guy who wrote the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
Where smiling men and welcoming women glide in gilded halls. From out of the caves of evening that swing between the strong-limbed earth and the tracery of the stars, I summon Aristotle and Aurelius, and what soul I will, and they come all graciously with no scorn or condensation. So with truth, I dwell above the bell. Which is funny because I don't know W.E. Du Bois would know the truth if it hit him in the face. But that is so elegantly put because what he's talking about is that what Web Du Bois is trying to tell everybody that the ancients belong to the world. They don't belong to just one race.
Yeah.
And the black community, the white community, all of them could do, you know, well by learning these things. And I would say this, and this is going to make me a racist, I know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking around as a black person and you're looking at all the white people and hate them because they're successful, The one thing I would not recommend you to continue doing is to do the opposite of what these people are doing.
Yeah.
And thinking you will get success out of it. That is the very definition of insanity under, Einstein's definition. But if you want to be as successful, then figure out why. And the reason why is because, and not all white people are successful. There's more failures in the white community than are in the black community. Simply because there's more white people in this country than there are black people.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
idea is that if you learn how to read, how to speak the language, you learn some rudimentary mathematics skills, then you will not starve. And if you will simply get a high school diploma and then get married, or get a job and then get married, and then have children, and you do those four things in that order, school, job, marriage, kids, you will not be in poverty.
Yeah.
It's a rarity. And it's usually because of a physical accident or something, and it's short-lived because these people will get right back on it and be all right. But even Webb Du Bois recognized over 100 years ago that dead white people could reach out and speak to black people, white people, Asian people, Indians, it didn't matter who, because what they had was universal knowledge, and it applied to mankind, not racial derivatives. And yet, sadly, we on college campuses across this country have kicked out all of these people. You can get a degree in America in English and never be required to read one work of Shakespeare.
Yep.
Right? Now, I find that amazing. And yet, Karl Marx, a dead white guy who was anti-Jewish, even though he was Jewish, is widely quoted and preached, and his economics and everything. And here's something I think is funny. Someone sitting there, those things, like, what do they call them, memes or memes? I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Okay, here's this one. Karl Marx never ran a company, never held political office, never oversaw any accounts, never held a job, any job. Supported throughout his life by his friend Frederick Engels, the son of a wealthy factory owner. Considered by many to be the greatest social, political, and economic philosopher of all time. All of the applications of his theories have ended in failure every time.
Yeah.
There's
Absolutely.
no country that can look to him and say we were successful.
Not a single one. We're talking tonight with Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, who is the host.
Well, I like him.
Yeah, I love him too. New Day Black and Red. I'm Tito, and I am merely just holding the water until he asks for it, and then I can hand it to him. I'm the exceptional one, Kim McClinton. Glad to have you all here at 5 p.m. We're talking today about Karl Marx and his weapons of political warfare. In his letter regarding racism to Vogt back in 1870, he dropped a hint of, and the professor alluded to it earlier, you watch what people do that make them successful, and you follow what they do to make them successful. You don't curse it or spit in the wind. You go with it. And in this particular case, Karl Marx understood that there was power held by the bourgeoisie, and they expressed that power through the press, through the pulpit, and through comic papers. I want to talk with you, Professor, real quick about
comic papers.
Comic papers, yes, but the cartoons, the satires, yeah.
Yes.
That's
a very powerful medium.
Yeah, exactly, it is. And when you have
Marx loved quoting Hegel, who was a German philosopher. And Hegel had this idea that there are nations and peoples in races, right?
Yeah.
That are ahistoric. Right? That means that they never played a major role in history and never would. And Hegel and Marx believed that black Africans, as they would refer to them as, were insignificant peoples whose history was irrelevant and they were frozen at civilizational levels, which were more advanced portion of mankind had already left them behind, meaning that black people would never keep up with the other races because of their inability to do so because of their skin color.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what befuddles me is that we do have a W.E.B. Du Bois, who was friend to Margaret Sanger.
Oh, yeah.
And
Her beard.
yeah, and he detested white people, but he worked with them enough to attempt to implement the strategies in the black culture. And now people would be offended by this because, you know, W.E.B. Du Bois is the scholar who graduated from Harvard University. And, you know, the racial antagonism of that particular day was no one who was black graduated from Harvard University that was of the Moor or black lineage. And he went on to profess a great liking for individuals like Stalin and Mao. And people back here, especially in the black press, lauded him, and on the college campuses, lauded him for his intellectual prowess and his ability to write about the talented tenth and so on. But significantly, in terms of him doing that, he was actually spreading the same racial antithesis about whites as Karl Marx had about him, or at least about blacks. And I just find that a conundrum.
Well, he wrote a book in 1874 called